Hello and welcome back to From the BON, the Burnley podcast. I'm Simon Evans, and with me is Chris Bowden and Darren Bentley. And obviously, we've had plenty of news over the last few days from Turf Moor, so we thought we'd jump on the pod a little earlier than expected. But when Kyle Walker signs for the Purple and Tropical Breezes, what else can you do? You've got to get on and talk about it. Gents, Darren, let's start off with that. I mean, it's big news. It's the kind of signing that makes the rest of football pay attention a little bit, but obviously massive news for Burnley.
Yeah, it's a big signing when you're actually making the back pages and the inside pages of the national newspapers over here, which we did this morning amid everything else that was going on in the world. I just think it's a fantastic sign. I know there will be critics who think we've got a 35-year-old on our books, we've given him a 2-year deal, but this is someone who's won pretty much everything there is to win. He's a winner. He's a born winner. He knows the manager well. He's coming to the camp. He apart from anything else, he's a leader in the dressing room, and you'd imagine he'd be wearing the captain's armband when we kick off in August. But he can be a bit of a magnet for other players. If people will look and think, if Kyle Walker's joining Burnley, there's something going on there. I want to be part of that. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. I can't believe his wages will be dramatically prohibitive. You'd imagine he's taking a reasonable cut because there's a bit of a quid pro quo there where he wanted to come back to the Northwest. So there will be a bit of give and take in there, I think. So I don't think we'll be breaking the bank to bring him here. And it just makes perfect sense. We're signing all these young, up-and-coming players. You need somebody in that dressing room who's got a bit of nous and a bit of Premier League experience. And the guy who's won the Premier League, number of times.
6 in 8 seasons with City. 6 in 8 seasons. Yeah.
Ridiculous signing, I think. Hats off to the hierarchy and the recruitment team, because I think it's top notch, and I can imagine the Walker shirts will be flying off the shelves in the shop.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you look online and some people are saying, "Oh, his legs have gone. He's not as quick as he used to be." Well, he's 35. Of course, he was one of the quickest players in world football, who could go up against Kylian Mbappe in his early years and match him. He's obviously not as fast as he used to be, but there's still a lot of a footballer there, surely.
Yeah. Ask Vinicius Junior who his toughest opponent is in world football. That's 2 years ago. And I know 2 years is a long time when you get to your mid-30s, etc. But, I don't think he's not as quick as you are. I mean, he was absolutely lightning quick, and he's enabled City to play this system for 8 years. It's like a cheat code, isn't he? The recovery pace he's got, the recovery pace he showed with England. When Southgate making him one of the centre backs or as a right wing back, as a right back, didn't matter where you played him. His recovery pace has just been ludicrous. But I don't think he's that. But he took some hammer after the Senegal game, and he didn't react as quick for the opening goal as but it's one of those, a forward in those situations, 9 times out of 10 will react quicker than the defender. It's just nature, isn't it? He's sniffing out a goal and he gets there. He gets there before Walker, but he's still in Tuchel's thoughts. He's picking him. He's not long since out of a loan at Milan, and I know it wasn't too favourable from the Italian media, and injuries sort of curtailed his performances. But you can sort of there's a clip of him I can't remember which player but he's tearing into him you could sort of see the leader within Walker. He's confident enough to go into another country, into a giant of a football club, and be dishing it out there. But I was also reading, I mean, he got left out of the Champions League final, which again is only 2 years ago. Pep turned all purist, didn't he, and played 4 centre halves and left Walker out. But Walker was the one in the dressing room sort of geeing the players up before the final. So you can see he's standing there. But we've seen this lad as a 19-year-old kid in the playoff final where we thought, what a magnificent prospect this lad is. And he's achieved that and more. One of the great Premier League, well, you could say one of the great Premier League players, they're man fullbacks. And his effect, if we're bringing Barnsley in to G up the dressing room, just imagine the effect that Kyle Walker will have. It's monumental.
Yeah, I think it's a huge sign, and I like everything about it. He's been one of my favourite players. I covered City quite a lot while I was back in England. and really enjoyed watching him because he's a smart footballer as well, isn't he? He's not just a fast fullback who bombed on and got forward. Like you say, he played sometimes in a 3 for City. He would tuck in and be the right-sided centre-back. He's also played on the very few occasions, but played it well as a sort of holding midfielder as well. You know, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Parker might be seeing him as a sort of Grezza type figure, you know, who could go in there, especially if the pace isn't quite what it was. And we do have a decent right back in Connor Roberts already, so there's options there with him. I just think, you know, it sends a really good signal about the club and their intent. But also, if you look at that back four now, if we keep hold of Maxime Esteve, if the lad Hartman coming in at left back from Feyenoord is as good as you'd hope a player coming from Feyenoord to Burnley is going to be, then you've got a left-hand side with a Champions League quality defender in Esteve and a good left back in Hartman, and then you'd presumably have Twanzarbi as the right central defender in a back four, and then Kyle Walker at right back. I mean, that's a good, solid back four, isn't it, Daz?
Yeah, and he may well even be a lean towards the 3 centre backs.
Yeah.
It opens up that option as well. But I'm so looking forward to seeing Esteve and the youth and exuberance and quality of Esteve against the old head of Walker, who can steer him through games. Because this, remember, is a huge leap for Maxime next year into the Premier League. He's coming up against some absolute athletes, isn't he?
Yeah.
But you've got Chris talked about being 35. Players at 35 these days, they're not past it. You know, modern methods of science and the way the players train and the way they approach it these days, they can go on to 37, 38, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's rare you see a player at 34, 35 lose their legs, I think. So I just think it's an absolute no-brainer. I can't wait now. I think it's really... It's lit the fuse a little bit, hasn't it, towards the sort of countdown to the season now, and we're all a little bit more excited than we were when we were perhaps signing players that we couldn't pronounce. Now we've got one that we can pronounce.
Yeah, no, he's an England international, isn't he? I mean, we compare it with like the big signings, you know, and people bring up Keith Newton as being, he was an England right back when he came to Burnley from Everton. That's an almost direct comparison, isn't it? A right back coming who was an England international, but that's going back a long way. But in terms of the impact, Chris, you know, just on that level, you know, you'd have to say it's up there with the big signings that Stan made. You know, the Ian Wrights and you know, that's the one that worked. There was a few others like Gaza that didn't work and so on. But it's got to be one of the biggest signings we've had over the last 30 years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is a big character. I don't think you could say he's as big a character as Gascoigne and Wright. He's had his off-field front page issues, like certainly like Gaza's had. But and bear in mind, I mean, Wright, he came into a second division team. You know, having come from Celtic. You know, I mean, that was a massive signing. Gaza was dropping down a division. His England career had long since vanished, hadn't it? Then 4 years and gone. But again, a huge name. But I say you're looking at that to sign it. Yeah, I mean, we signed Joe Hart at a time when we had 2 England goalkeepers. So the effect wasn't. You know, Hart's one of the all-time England. You know, in terms of caps. You know, the all-time appearance makers as a goalkeeper, and but we had Heaton and Pope on the books, so it sort of lessened the headlines, if you will. Crouchy again, you know, I think he only played 6 games in the end towards the end of his career.
That didn't work out, did it? Really?
No, but this one, like I say, he is the last picking is a current England international. Like I say, only 6 Premier League titles, all that goes with it. You know. Triple, you know, won the treble with Manchester City 2 years ago, Champions League in his back pocket, and I'd say just 8 years at the top level with City, and before that in a very good Tottenham team as well, which people forget. And yeah, you won't mind the lad he did battle with there, would you? If we had trips to have had trips at Walker at various points, it's remarkable, isn't it?
I'm going to say he's a bigger and a more ambitious signing than any of those names you just mentioned, because you mentioned Wrighty in the second tier, Gazette in the first tier, Crouchy, Hart. The one thing they all had in common is they were all stopgap measures. Hart was brought in, remember, because we had an injury crisis with Tom being out. Wrighty and Gaza were brought in at the tail end of the season to try and get us over the line. Crouchy, similar, brought in as a bit of an old head. This is an ambitious, I think. I know he's 35, and that sounds a bit crazy, but this is an ambitious signing with a plan in mind, I think. Not just somebody coming in for 6 months just to try and help us out. He signed a 2-year deal. So kudos to everybody who's pulled it off, I think.
But to say, I think the names, you're looking at, I think Fenerbahce has actually spoken to him. Galatasaray were keen on him. He's just come from Milan. He'll have had options in the Premier League, I've no doubt. He'll have had options. I bet he could have gone back to Sheffield if the finances were right. I mean, that would have been a huge pull, on his heartstrings, etc. But like I say, they've not just snapped him up because no one's interested in him. He's got a great deal of options. He likes the manager, he likes the project, and as you say, he's been brought in to be part of something and get us to that 17th and above that we want to be in this season.
And the cherry on the cake, Simon, he comes in with a name behind him. The American owners love a player with a name, don't they? You can hang your hat on somebody when you're selling the club. He works in that measure as well.
Yeah, he does. I don't see a risk in it. I know some people have said, why 2 years deal? He'll be 37 then. But if it goes wrong, if his legs have totally gone, and I don't believe they have, but if they have, he won't hang around. Players of that stature who've been earning the kind of money they've been earning over the last decade, they're not going to hang around just to pick up a paycheck for a season at Burnley if they're not getting in the team and it's all gone wrong. They'll either retire or go somewhere else and do something else. So I don't see a risk in it whatsoever. He's the second signing of the past week, of course, coming in after a bigger money deal to bring in Loum Chuana, a French under-21 winger who's had a season in Serie A with Lazio. An interesting player. I mean, we all giggle about looking at YouTube highlights because obviously they are only the highlights and they show us the best bits. But it does give you an idea what kind of player he is. And he's a physical sort of winger, isn't he? He can play in more central positions as well, but he reminds me a little bit of that kind of winger like Doku at City a little bit. That he's a strong unit as well as being someone with technical skill. He's another one that you never know with these kind of players because we've had Wilson Odobert who looked like absolute class, and then we've had other players who haven't quite caught fire. But what do you make of that one, Daz?
We love a winger, don't we? We love signing wingers, don't we? He's another one to add to the long list. I have to confess, I know so little about the kid. Like you, Simon, I've looked at his YouTube and I've yet to see a bad YouTube clip of anybody yet who you're trying to sign because all they do is put all the highlights together.
You do well to get a good Hutondi highlights clip together, I think. But
you said that, I didn't. But yeah, you're probably right there. There's probably a few more you could damn like that. Listen, he gives us options, doesn't he? He gives us options, and that's what Parker's going to need in the Premier League is options because, especially when you've got young kids whose volatility in performance means they should be dropped in and dropped out a little bit. We're not going to have the same 11 every week. I don't think we are. And wingers are those sort of flaky kinds who could be 8 out of 10 one week and 5 out of 10 the next. It's an unknown, isn't it? It's a flip of a coin. You've just got to put your trust in the recruitment department there and hope they've unearthed another gem because if they have, you've got an asset on your hands, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, Chris, I do wonder if some agents work very, very hard to get French lads at least one appearance for the under-21 team because there's an awful lot of players around Europe who've made 1 or 2 appearances for France's under-21 team and then pop off to Serie A or La Liga or somewhere.
Gets some extra notes on the feed, that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But he hasn't set the world on fire at Lazio. People I've spoken to who've seen a bit of Lazio have said there looks to be something there, but it didn't really click for him. But 21-year-old lads going to a club like Lazio, and expecting them to click in their first season, it's not really going to happen very often, apart from the odd absolutely exceptional talent, is it?
Yeah, I say it's a different brand of football, isn't it? In Serie A, it's a different way of life. I believe in decent spells. It's Salernitana who was at prior to Lazio, so he'd done well enough to get himself the move in the first place. But very, in the modern way, if you're going to, you can play anywhere in those forward positions. Wide left, wide right, off the front as a 10 sort of thing. So. I don't know. When we were discussing options for that final day against Millwall, if you remember, I was sort of like making a push for a very fluid front three, without a sort of focal point, and that's an option. You look at the bodies we've got still. I mean, you don't know what'll happen with Amdouni. I'm still presuming he'll be on his way, but you've got Ramsey back in there. Trezor back fit. Koleosho, Anthony, Edwards, Chuani, all these players, and I see you have like Dan suggests, you have the option there to rotate, to drop in, to take out, and let them have a look at things. And I said that they're all exciting talents. It's just nailing down those, the ones who can be more consistent, the more regular starters, and make a big impact. But it's say, you look at his physique, his pace. He's got all the attributes to be a Premier League footballer, doesn't he? So there'll be something there amid the data, isn't there? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you look at these absolutely top teams. I mean, I've just been watching Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain playing, and they're both really good examples of this. And I've been covering this Club World Cup, and there's a lot of teams playing this way, where they're playing with three forward players, if you like, and they might have a Harry Kane as one of the focal points in the middle, or they might not. But they all have these inside forwards, as they used to get called in the 60s, who play. Are they wingers? Are they attacking players? They're coming into that space that you used to have a number 10 operating in. They're fast, they're skillful, they know where the back of the net is. They produce a lot of goals for teams. You look at PSG, they've got 4 or 5 who they rotate in that position, haven't they? And that does seem the modern way. I mean, we had a press briefing with Arsene Wenger and Jurgen Klinsmann that FIFA put on, where they were looking at this tournament from a sort of technical, tactical point of view, the Club World Cup. And Wenger was saying that. He's saying the goals are coming from these guys, and that in some ways what's left of the number 9 is almost to support these guys or to create spaces for them and so on. So having an abundance of wingers, it's what Company wanted to do. It is a modern trend, isn't it?
It's interesting because if we're going to go down that route, and who knows whether we are or not, I was about to say there is still a big number 9 size gaping hole in that squad. But if we are going to go down that route, perhaps we're going to go with what we've got in that capacity. And Foster isn't going to score a ton load of goals. We've been there and done that before, haven't we? So it'll be an interesting one to see what he does. I still think he's going to sign a striker somewhere.
Yeah.
But that system you talk about also allows for you perhaps playing that 3 at the back and getting those fullbacks higher up the pitch and flooding your midfield and getting the crosses in from wide. Then your 3 forwards can play a little more narrow. So it's going to be really interesting. I can see there being a system change. I can't see Scott Parker going into the season playing in the Premier League as he did in the Championship. That's for sure.
Well, that's an interesting part of it, isn't it, Chris? Because you'd have to think that after what happened to him at Fulham and Bournemouth, Parker has some really clear ideas about what he's going to do this time, that he's not going to just... We wanted to keep the core of the squad together, and we're kind of doing that despite losing Egan Riley and possibly Trafford. But if we keep Esteve there, that core is sort of at least partially intact. But the idea of playing 3 at the back that Daz has thrown in there, or playing a slightly different midfield structure and so on, it's not. We don't have to keep the same system that we had last year in the Championship, do we? I don't think he will.
No, he might well pull that one out of the bag, but I still think I'd be surprised if he went to a back 3. I mean, show no inclination. I think you can still keep your back 4, and let's say having these, whether there's 3 forwards behind a front man or 3 forwards up top, it's ready-made for your overlapping, pacey fullbacks who we just happen to have brought two in. One of which is one of the very best practitioners of that. As I say, Walker's shown he can step into midfield, like as has Roberts. But if you want if Marcus Edwards is coming in off the right hand side and you want someone to bomb on, well, we've just signed the best in the business. Yeah,
You're
it's
painting
brilliant.
pictures now, Chris. You're painting pictures.
But that is exactly. If Edwards must be. I mean, Edwards will have played with. He'll be at Tottenham at the same time as Walker. That's another little connection. He must be rubbing his hands together. You can almost leave Edwards to cheat, can't you? I mean, we talk about Anthony's graft on the other side. You can say to Edwards, right, you just stay there. Because we've got Kyle Walker is just going to go boom, 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 up and down all game.
Bloody hell, Simon, I'm checking my passport. It's got 12 months on it here. Where's this is going?
Yeah, no, it's an exciting one. I mean, we're feeling. I must admit, after the Axel Twanzarbi signing and with his injury record, and then Hartman's had a couple of ACLs. Yeah. I was sort of thinking, and I was listening to Greavesy sort of, very enthusiastically talk about the transfer window last week on the pod, and I was thinking, I don't really share that feeling. There's question marks over players who've had ACL operations. There's question marks over like someone like Twanzarbi whose career has unfortunately been hampered by injuries. And I'm like, where are we going with this recruitment? But then these two signings coming in, an exciting sort of French under-21 international from Lazio, who you think there's got to be something there with him. And then Kyle Walker, I'm feeling a lot more positive about it 1 week on. I mean, we talk about a centre forward. Is there anything else, Daz, you'd be looking at and thinking in the next couple of weeks, I really want to see this area filled?
Well, I mean, we touched on it the last time we had a pod where we're still, if we're losing Brownell, we're still a central midfielder down, aren't we? And a quality central midfielder is needed in there, whether it's a Kyle Walker type, in terms of stature, or whether it's just someone who's up and coming. But he needs somebody in there, I think, who's going to anchor that midfield. We know Josh Cullen can do it at this level. Josh Cullen will sit there all day long. I'm not convinced about Josh Lawrence at this level, really not. May prove me wrong. Wasn't convinced about Brownell at this level. So we're one light in there, I think. We've got Hannibal.
Gundogan's on his way out to City.
So that's the big... That and a number 9 for me are the two missing ingredients now. And potentially a keeper, of course. I know we brought Vice in, but I don't know where our keeper's going.
Yeah. No, it's there's a few things to be determined there. I mean, if Trafford or Esteve go, that has to be dealt with straight away. And you're right, Brownhill's would be a big loss. I still part of me thinks, he might be just looking at his options. I don't know.
Well, it's not signed yet, has it? I mean, you're usually getting a player who's out of contract and has a few suitors. Usually they're like it'll have been done in time for him to be unveiled on 1st of July. Now, he's a free agent as it stands, and until he does sign it, until he does take an option, or it's looking more likely he's going to leave, isn't it? But I wouldn't give up all hope just yet.
Do you think Kyle Walker? You were saying, Daz, about it being an attraction for players. Do you think Josh Brownhill seeing Kyle Walker walk into that dressing room thinks, do I really want to go somewhere else?
It just depends what options he's got, Josh, doesn't it, on the table that might appeal to him, having had a few years now at Burnley. But you're right. I mean, a signing of Kyle Walker's stature and the way Burnley are going about their business this summer feels a little bit different. And he might want to be part of that. So, I would imagine the next week or two will certainly... They won't want to hang around. I mean, they're back in pre-season now. They're off to Portugal for a pre-season training camp, aren't they? So they won't want to be leaving it too late before they get that squad gelled together. It doesn't feel like we're going to be signing players willy-nilly on deadline day this year. It looks like we're getting that squad in place nice and early. The 4 players from last season snapped up with obligations to buy pretty quickly. 5 new faces in. And we're only just back in training 2 days. So there's already a real transition in the squad. So... It's in Josh. We don't know where Josh sits. Do we? We don't know what offers he's got on the table.
It does all depend on that, doesn't it? What is he comparing Burnley to? Isn't it really? Before we knock off this one, and obviously there's a lot of players that are going to be leaving the club as well because the size of the squad will need trimming for wage bill reasons, and also for presumably Parker doesn't want some of the players who aren't going to be featuring hanging around. We'll talk about that another time, but we have to talk about the new kit which was launched this week with the video on Pendle Hill. I quite like the idea of going to Pendle Hill for the video launch, but the
players didn't.
Chris. Well, the kit, you're sat there in a very classic Adidas number with the 3 white stripes across the front that I think is one of the better ones of the modern era anyway. Chris, what do you make?
It's like modern. It's like 27 years old, isn't it?
Yeah, but since they started branding things, and, I mean, I don't think you can get better than 1960.
I was saying the one redeeming feature of being, good grief, how old was I then? 23 or something like that. Used to buy clothes baggy back in the day.
That's how you still fitted in, yeah.
So it's skin tight now. But no, it's I quite like the look's quite retro, isn't it? The new shirt. It looks almost like that late 60s, early 70s, crew neck. There was all claret body with was it blue collar and
Dave
white
Thomas.
Socks, white socks, white shorts.
Frank Casper, Paul Fletcher.
Yeah, but it's like with all modern football shirts, they're all spoiled by sponsors and stuff, aren't they? And they just don't look. We never used to moan about it. Like Sharp Electronics used to look great on a Man United strip, didn't it? And Chevrolet looks bloody rubbish, and Crown Paints look great on a Liverpool shirt, and Ensley, and they just the current, like that Watford monstrosity that you showed us yesterday, Daz. It's just the sponsors are ruining strips, but you have to anchor it to something. You got the Pendle Hill contours and this, that, and the other, which is quite a nice stuff. But I saw a kid in Blackburn Town Centre with one on today, and I give him a thumbs up. He looked all right. So.
But like we've looked at the pictures, and everyone looks a bit purple. A lot of people look at. And on the pictures, to me, it looks a bit too purple. I mean, I do really like it. And strangely, the sponsor thing, given that they've not done it in gold or yellow, then it's actually blue and white. It does give it a bit of a pop in a way. I don't like the 96 logo in the middle of it, but at least it's claret blue and white,
Well, there's a couple of things here. I mean, we're in the last year of sponsorship, betting sponsorships now, so people are trying to make hay a little bit while the sun shines, I think, in that respect. We've been it the last year. So hence probably from the table for Burnley was probably nowhere near what 96.com could offer. But it's interesting how many clubs now are going down the unsponsored shirt route. Burnley, I think this might be the first time we've done a shirt that's not got the sponsor on the front for sale. I don't think we did it last year, did we? Pretty sure. Everton, where I work now, are doing the same thing. They have an unsponsored shirt. They've got steak on the front. It's becoming a more common thing. And I would imagine, and we won't see the numbers on this, but I'd be amazed if they don't sell 3 times as many shirts without the sponsor on than they do with the sponsor. But 96.com aren't bothered about fans out in Burnley wearing their shirt with a sponsor on. Yeah. They're just there for the publicity of it on TV.
Global TV
in Malaysia, wherever it might be. I went in the club shop today, so I, in the interest of research, I went in and my lad picked up his kit, which he hated when he saw the pictures and loved when he saw it in the flesh.
Right.
For my eyes, it's not as purple as last year. It's not as claret should be. It kind of falls somewhere in between the two. It feels great. It looks great, I think. There are issues. I mean, the change to a tonal crest, for me, is sacrilege. I have no idea. Well, no, I'll reword that. I think that was inevitable. We were going down that route. The minute we did a digital version of our crest that was monotone, that was monochrome, I think we were always going to be introducing that onto a kit. But the Burnley crest should be on the kit for me. And it should be the crest that's always been on the shirt, well, the modern version of the shirt. So to go down that route, I think, is a backward step, as is the colour change. There is no way that is Pantone 222, which has been the claret that we've used. And I know there's been variations in the claret probably down the years from Adidas to Umbro, to whatever we've gone through. But that's not a claret shirt, it's a purple shirt. but it's a little more Claret in it. So they've come a little bit backwards towards the Claret. So there are issues with it, but having said that, like you touched on earlier, that retro look, as soon as you see it, it takes me right back to 1973. It takes me back to Lane James wearing that shirt, and Peter Noble and Paul Fletcher, which can never be a bad thing. And I think it'll look great. With the white shorts and the blue socks, I think it'll look terrific.
I was relieved about the white shorts because I thought I had this horrible feeling it was going to be all Claret or something.
Claret,
or
I've always
the
liked
sky
the
blue shorts never
not.
quite looks right, does it?
I've always liked blue shorts, but I think that the blue shorts, you need the blue sleeves. That complements the sleeves. When it's all Claret, I think the white shorts are perfect. I think it's probably an 8 out of 10. I hate the crest. I'll be honest with you, I hate the crest. I've not been a fan of round collars, but that's very much a personal preference. But they will sell. There's no doubt about it. It's a great shirt in that respect. And I imagine we'll see lots and lots of fans walking around with shirts without 96 on the front.
I think there's something about wanting to wear the same shirt as the players. We'll see. It'll be an interesting one to see. Yeah. And I also think that when I looked at the non-sponsored version on the club shop, it looks a bit boring without a sponsor's logo.
It's like a training top then, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's...
Yeah.
I think you're right, Daz.
We're talking about Rovers. Talking about Rovers that lot down the road who've gone down the tonal crest route
on
the rather delightful looking away strip, celebrating their 150th anniversary this year, but it's white. So a football club that often mocks Burnley for their location and their close proximity to Yorkshire. They've got the white rose on their shirt now.
This is the green kit from Rose.
Yeah, it's got a tonal white crest. So you've got the white rose.
White rose.
So there we have it.
I think we can all agree that the best crest is the one that Chris has got on his shirt there.
Yeah,
which is the old embroidered coat of arms, wasn't it?
That's the town crest, isn't it? That's
which I loved. I mean, Barry Kilby, of course, changed the crest when we got promoted in 2009, didn't he? We brought the sort of modern version of the crest in. But I think that was very much a return to sort of bringing the town crest back into it again, wasn't it? And simplifying it a little bit. So there's an element of...
it was a retro kit, wasn't it, for the 1960s?
Yeah, there's an element of continuity in there, wasn't it? It wasn't just changing it to a two-colour tonal crest, which is... It's not our crest. I get it on away kits. I don't mind it on away kits. Everton have got the tower that's within their crest as one of theirs. Newcastle have changed their badge on the away kits, something to the old NUFC. Leeds have done the same. On second and third kits, I think you get away with it. But your home kit should always carry your crest on it, not this horrendous digital version we've got.
It does have the BFC from the V badge on the back, doesn't it?
All day long.
Yeah. On the back of the neck is there.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Right. Well, a sort of warmish, sort of curious, not too bad about that kit, really. Yeah.
It's got great elements to it. It has got great elements to it. It looks great, and the players it'll look fantastic on the TV, which is one of the big things, isn't it? And kids and adults alike will love wearing it, I'm sure.
Yeah, you look at the pictures and you think, like, I won't mind to go at that, and then you have to remind yourself you're actually not Zian Fleming. So it's because we've got a centre forward who looks like a male model there when he's putting all those kits on.
Get your 90s cut. That's what you want.
But that's the other reason you won't want 96.com on your waist, because a lot of people it might look like you've got two donuts on your waist when you've got that shirt on. You've got to know your limits.
Exactly. Brilliant. Right. Well, thanks for joining us. And we'll be back again when we can get back together again, a little bit ad hoc over the summer weeks as we try and get together when we can. Everyone wants to do their things a little bit over the summer, but we'll be stepping it up over the coming weeks as we get closer and closer to the start of the Premier League season with Kyle Walker in that Burnley shirt. Looking forward to it. Until then, up the Clarets.
How many times do I have to tell you? Stop